It's January 23rd here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour, starting with another major cold snap here in South Korea. The nationwide cold snap is reaching its peak today, with morning lows diving to minus 14 degrees Celsius here in Seoul. The country's western coastal areas and Jeju Island are under heavy snow. The U.S. and the U.K. have reportedly staged additional strikes against Houthi targets in Yemen. Monday's attacks are the 8th round of such strikes by the U.S. military against Houthi infrastructure in just over 10 days. The Dow Jones closed Monday above 38,000 for the first time, and the S&P also notched another record close as investors became more hopeful about the course of the economy and looked to coming earnings for signs of an AI and technologies boom. Brutally cold weather is affecting large areas of Korea, along with the blizzard conditions along the west coast and on Jeju. To get the latest, we connect with our Lee Ji-hyun at the Weather Center. Ji-hyun, what do you have for us this morning?
Good morning. Frigid temperatures and biting winds are sweeping most parts of Korea this morning. A cold wave advisory has been upgraded to a warning, and more regions are under cold wave alerts, with feels like temperatures below minus 20 degrees Celsius here in the capital. Daegwallyeong in Gangwon province is seeing readings nearing minus 30 degrees Celsius, and we don't expect highs to rise much from our freezing morning figures. Concerns are rising with more snow in the forecast for Chungcheongdo, Jeolla-do provinces, and Jeju, with snow alerts in place. Mountainous regions on Jeju could see more than 50 centimeters. Please stay safe. That's all for now, but I will be back with more at the end of the newscast.
Now, over in Gaza, dozens of people have been killed in intense Israeli strikes on Khan Younis. The latest offensive comes as a group of 5 Arab countries are looking to strike a peace deal between Israel and Hamas. Lee Seung-ja has more.
Despite Israel stating that it had shifted to low-intensity offensives in Gaza, its military on Monday conducted intense airstrikes in Khan Younis in southern Gaza, which left dozens dead. There was also fighting on the ground between Israeli soldiers and Hamas fighters, with residents saying that tanks had surrounded a hospital and university where thousands of displaced people were sheltering. Khan Younis has recently been the focus of the Israeli military, an area it says is where Hamas commanders are holed up. On Sunday, Israel also reported that it had found an underground compound in the city where it believed about 20 Israeli hostages had been held. Amid the ongoing conflict, a mediation plan by a group of Arab countries to end the war between Israel and Hamas is taking shape. According to the Wall Street Journal on Monday, 5 Arab nations, including Saudi Arabia, will soon reveal the framework to Israel. An official involved with the mediation process said this latest plan is different from the previous plan, which saw prisoners and hostages exchanged. He added that the final goal is a 2-state solution involving the establishment of a Palestinian state. The White House said Monday that President Joe Biden still believes in the feasibility of a 2-state solution despite opposition from Israel. According to White House National Security Council spokesman John Kirby, Biden believes there is a way to get Israel to agree to the plan and is optimistic about it. However, he stressed that such a plan requires compromise. The European Union's foreign policy chief, Josep Borrell, on Monday also echoed the need for a 2-state solution, saying Israel's plan to destroy Hamas in Gaza is not working. Ahead of talks with Israeli and Palestinian top diplomats, Borrell said Israel cannot build peace only by military means, echoing Washington's criticism of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's rejection of a 2-state solution. Lee Seung-ja, Arirang News.
The U.S. and the U.K. have conducted a second joint operation to target Houthi military facilities in Yemen in their latest attempt to stop the Houthis' attacks in the Red Sea. According to their joint statement on Monday, the coalition forces carried out attacks on an underground storage site and locations associated with the militant group's missile and air surveillance capabilities. Canada, the Netherlands, Bahrain, and Australia supported the attacks. Meanwhile, the U.S. military on Monday denied the Houthis' claims that they had attacked the American cargo ship Ocean Jazz in the Gulf of Aden. The U.S. began striking the Houthis earlier this month in response to their attacks on commercial vessels in the Red Sea, which the Houthis say are to show their support for Palestine in the Gaza conflict. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has denied that there is any evidence of North Korean weapons being used by Russia and blamed the West for prolonging the war in Ukraine. Lavrov was speaking at a UN Security Council meeting convened at the request of Russia on Monday. Moscow's top diplomat also slammed the West for providing military support to Ukraine, which he said is hindering peace negotiations. Before the meeting, representatives from 46 countries, including South Korea, the U.S., and Japan, and the EU, issued a joint statement accusing Russia of hypocrisy and called the meeting a distraction. Pointing out that Russia's use of North Korean ballistic missiles is a violation of UNSC resolutions, the diplomats also raised the possibility of Russia helping to develop North Korea's weapons technology. Israel, well, at least its Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu seems to have no interest whatsoever in ending the Gaza war through Hamas's proposal. Then when will a breakthrough come? For more, we're joined by Professor Austin Nube this morning. Welcome back.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Thanks for joining us. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has rejected Hamas's proposal to end the war in exchange for freeing the remaining hostages. Does Netanyahu want to see the end of Hamas? Is that what Israel really wants?
Well, the interests of the Netanyahu coalition and that of the Israeli people, I think, are quite divergent. Netanyahu is beginning to understand that the two goals of IDF operations in Gaza, eliminating and degrading Hamas and freeing the hostages, are mutually exclusive. The Israeli approach to defeating Hamas is not going to lead to the release of the hostages, and Netanyahu is incapable of waging the war in such a manner that will also release the hostages. And so he's in a no-win situation, both politically within his coalition and also among the Israeli people.
Definitely calls for a deal are growing within Israel, like you mentioned, especially from families of those hostages vowing to continue their protest. Some say Netanyahu will have to give in eventually. Professor, what's your take on this?
So Netanyahu, in the last week especially, has faced increased domestic opposition to the coalition war plan in Gaza. We've seen public protests in the Knesset and out on the streets, that the Israeli people are increasingly growing war-weary and upset that the remaining 130 hostages have not been released. At the same time, Netanyahu is keeping an eye on the American election, understanding that his viability as prime minister and his ability to maintain a coalition is also dependent on who wins the White House in November 2024. And so it's a delicate balancing game of managing politics within his own coalition within Tel Aviv and also watching and monitoring the U.S. election this autumn.
Right. The Israeli PM is surely under huge pressure within his country, but the U.S. is also pushing Israel and Hamas to really accept a comprehensive plan that would end the war, release those hostages, and form a Palestinian state, which Netanyahu has strongly rejected. Do you think there needs to be more pressure from Washington? What do you think?
It's certainly. The recent negotiations to introduce a ceasefire by the 5 Arab states are notable and honorable. The problem is you need the Americans on board for that negotiation, that the Biden administration needs to exercise leverage and conditionality with security assistance and support to Netanyahu and to the Israeli Defense Force. The only way this will be resolved, particularly on the end of protecting Palestinian civilians and releasing the hostages, is for the Biden administration to offer conditional assistance based on resumption of a two-state solution peace plan. There needs to be a political settlement. There's no military solution to what's going on in Gaza. There's a political negotiation alongside the military campaign.
Right. Professor Nube, then if the conflict over in Gaza does last as Netanyahu insists and wishes, how long do you think it'll actually last? I mean, how well will Israel and Hamas be able to actually hold up?
The answer to that depends not only on battlefield conditions within South Gaza, it's also what happens on the Israeli street. if the domestic public within Israel are growing increasingly frustrated with the lack of progress, particularly the lack of hostage release, you'll see mounting domestic pressure that will affect Netanyahu's domestic political calculus and also the way they wage the campaign in Gaza. Right now, we've seen attacks just in the last 48 hours, killing 65, increasing humanitarian pressure on the residents of Khan Younis in South Gaza. And as the humanitarian situation gets more dire, international pressure, particularly from the Europeans and the Americans, is only bound to increase. And so Netanyahu is facing domestic pressure at home from the Israeli electorate alongside pressure from international partners.
Definitely. Netanyahu's ultimate goal is to destroy Hamas. And how realizable is that goal to actually see the end of Hamas?
Well, I think we've seen the answer to that since 2005, that the ability of the Israeli military to grade and destroy Hamas as a militant organization is extraordinarily difficult. Even if you're able to eliminate the current political and military leadership of the organization, the ideology is still going to exist. And the problem is the way the IDF has waged the war in Gaza has increased Palestinian support for Hamas since the war began. We've seen through waves of surveying that prior to the war, 1 in 4 residents of Gaza supported Hamas. And now it's up to 1 in 3, or perhaps as high as 40% of Palestinians see Hamas as the only viable resistance force to force the Israeli government to the negotiating table.
Definitely, it's a lot more complicated than it looks based on the past experience that the Israel and Hamas saw. All right, Professor Nube, thank you so much for your time this morning. We appreciate it, as always.
Thanks for having me. Take care.
Over in the U.S., the Dow Jones Industrial Average closed at above 38,000 for the first time in history. And the S&P 500 index also clinching another all-time high. Our Choi Soo-hyung has the details.
U.S. stocks climbed on Monday local time to set new records. The Dow Jones Industrial Average advanced above 138 points to finish at 38,001.81, closing above the 38,000 level for the first time. The S&P 500 reached an all-time high, closing at above 4,850. The Nasdaq Composite climbed 49.32 points to above 15,360. Last Friday, the S&P 500 index broke its previous record set 2 years ago. Technology stocks are rising despite the adjustment in expectations regarding possible interest rate cuts by the Federal Reserve. In the S&P 500, stocks in industries such as real estate, finance, and healthcare were all up. However, stock market experts have expressed concerns that stock valuations are too high and that companies' actual performances may not support these levels. According to data from the Conference Board global think tank, the U.S. leading economic index in December showed a decline for the 21st consecutive month, indicating economic recession in the U.S. IBM, Netflix and Tesla are about to release their business result this week, while earnings are expected to decrease along with the slowdown in growth. Choi Soo-hyung, Arirang News.
And moving on to the Youth Winter Olympics being held over in Gangwon-do Province, South Korea. The Olympic cauldron, often seen as a symbol of the Games, takes on an even more special significance in Gangwon 2024. Correspondent Song Yu-jin tells us why.
These red and orange flames may look real, but they're anything but. What you're seeing is the first digital cauldron in Olympic history. Shortly after the final torchbearer lit the actual cauldron during Friday's opening ceremony of the 2024 Gangwon Winter Youth Olympic Games, the digital cauldron also burst into flames.
The flames look so authentic. I can't tell if it's the heat from the flames or just the overall excitement for the Games, but I can definitely feel the warmth here.
This is part of Gangwon 2024's aim to host a green and sustainable Olympics.
If we were to use the traditional cauldron, we would need to use gas. As we've become more conscious and aware about the environment, we wanted to try something new.
The secret behind the digital cauldron? Anamorphic technology.
Anamorphic technology is a specialized video technique that gives a three-dimensional appearance to a flat surface. So while the digital cauldron is essentially a cube-shaped electronic display board, it creates the illusion that the flames are burning inside when you look at it.
The cauldron mirrors the actual weather conditions based on data from the Korea Meteorological Administration, like this if it rains. But rest assured, the flames won't be extinguished. All of this is controlled by cloud servers. A remote data center operating through cloud computing determines what's displayed on the screen. Gangwon 2024 has set up 5 servers, 3 in Korea and 2 in Japan, in case of emergencies. As for the actual cauldron, its embers are housed inside a lantern at the athletes' village, blending tradition with innovation. So the digital cauldron will burn in front of the Gangneung Hockey Center until the closing ceremony on February 1st. 송유진, Arirang News, Gangneung.
Good morning, I'm Kim Si-young, and now we turn off to stories from around the world. We begin today in China, where a 7.1 magnitude earthquake shook China's Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region in the early hours of Tuesday. No casualties have been reported so far. According to the China Earthquake Network Center, the strong quake above 7 magnitude hit Wuxi County in Aksu Prefecture at 2:09 a.m. on Tuesday. A succession of aftershocks topping a 5.3 magnitude followed the main earthquake. The epicenter, with a depth of 22 kilometers, was situated in the mountainous border area between China and Kyrgyzstan. In temperatures of around -10 degrees Celsius, local residents of the Aksu area rushed to open space for safety, while firefighters were dispatched immediately. In Cameroon, the world's first routine vaccine program against malaria began on Monday. Around 40 years in the making, the new malaria vaccine approved by the World Health Organization will be offered free of charge to all infants of up to 6 months old in Cameroon. The symbolic first malaria jab was given to a baby girl named Daniela on Monday at a health clinic in the country's capital, Yaoundé. After decades of research, GlaxoSmithKline developed the RTS-S vaccine, which, according to US research, is expected to be effective in over 36% of the cases. While Cameroon is the first country to run wide-scale malaria vaccinations, 19 other countries aim to begin jabs this year, according to Gavi, a global vaccine alliance. In Africa, malaria kills around 600,000 people every year, with children under 5 accounting for at least 80% of the deaths. In Ecuador, a military operation seized a record 22 metric tons of cocaine on Sunday against a backdrop of chaotic internal armed conflict against organized crime. Officials confirmed on Monday that the seizure was one of the country's biggest narcotics busts, which followed 6 months of preparation and surveillance. Ecuador's military on Sunday publicized videos on social media site X showing warehouses of plastic-wrapped and boxed packages. The armed forces stated that the drugs were distributed in 733 individual parcels to be transported to Asia, Europe, and the Americas. Ecuador is still under a 60-day state of emergency as it battles to control organized crime cartels in the wake of an outbreak of violence across the country. Lastly, in the US, fierce winter storms across the country have left at least 92 dead over the past week. According to CBS News, there were 25 weather-related fatalities in Tennessee and 16 in Oregon, with both states under a state of emergency following the deadly ice storms. Deaths have also been reported in Mississippi, Illinois, Pennsylvania, Washington, Kentucky, Wisconsin, New York, and New Jersey. Tens of thousands of people across the US were also left without power and access to water due to the weather. Icy conditions are expected to ease off in the coming days.
Good morning. Korea is in the grip of an intense cold snap. Make sure to dress in double layers and cover up from head to toe. It's going to be one freezing day all day with sharp winds. Making matters worse for those in Jeolla-do provinces and Jeju, there is more snow. Wet clouds are dropping heavy snow on those areas this morning. If you're traveling to Jeolla-do and Jeju, check your travel schedules in advance for any changes. There could be. West of Jeolla-do could see more than 20 centimeters of snowfall today. Meanwhile, athletes in Gangwon-do will need to brace for extreme cold weather. Especially those in Pyeongchang will notice an even colder afternoon than yesterday, with an expected high of minus 14 degrees Celsius. Seoul gets up to -7, even Busan only tops out at 1 degree this afternoon. And it will feel like being in a freezer through Thursday, so please stay safe till then. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
We thank you for watching New Day at Arirang. We'll be back tomorrow for Wednesday's edition at the same time, 9 a.m. Korea time.